All right, so get this. Candace Owens, the American conservative commentator,
Right.
got blocked from entering Australia.
Yeah.
And it's not just like your average,
Right.
travel snafu or something.
Definitely not.
This thing goes deep,
It does.
touching on free speech,
Absolutely.
national security,
Yeah.
and honestly, a whole lot of just like global side-eye.
I think what's really fascinating about this case is that it's not even just about one person or even one country, really.
Right.
It's raising some like really fundamental questions about where the line is
Yeah.
between freedom of speech
Yeah.
and protecting a nation's social fabric.
Right.
And those lines are getting blurrier
Yeah.
every day.
To our interconnected world. Okay, so for those who might not be,
Yeah.
following American politics religiously,
Right.
let's do a quick snapshot of Candace Owens.
Sure.
She's not just your average, conservative pundit.
Owens has cultivated a very specific brand, I think, of conservatism.
Yeah.
She's known for really aggressively challenging conventional thought
Yeah.
on race culture,
Yeah.
the pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's amassed a huge following,
Right.
but her style is undeniably confrontational, which is why she's constantly at the center of these controversies.
Yeah. And Australia clearly decided they'd had enough
Yeah.
of that controversy landing on their shores.
Right.
Their Minister of Home Affairs, Tony Burke,
Yep.
straight up rejected her visa application.
Wow.
Essentially saying, her brand of trouble stirring wasn't welcome.
You got to understand, Australia has a history of being very, very careful
Right.
about who they let in.
Yeah.
Think back to 2019 when they deported a UK YouTuber for inciting religious hatred.
Oh, wow.
Their immigration policies are designed to prevent that kind of social unrest, and they clearly felt Owens posed a similar risk.
Yeah, it's almost like they saw, her recent online activity, her fiery rhetoric, and thought nope, we're going to risk it.
Nope.
But here's where it gets really juicy.
Okay.
The reaction to this ban has been absolutely wild.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got some people who are cheering Australia on,
right?
Saying it's their sovereign right to protect their social harmony. They're saying freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences. Australia's well within its rights to say, not in our backyard.
Not our backyard.
Yeah.
And you've got the other side who are absolutely outraged, calling it a blatant attack on free speech.
A total attack.
They're saying, silencing dissenting voices, even ones as provocative as Owens, sets a dangerous precedent.
For sure.
And then, of course, you have Owens' supporters claiming this is proof that she's over the target.
Right.
Governments are afraid of her message. And this just validates everything she's been saying.
Absolutely.
And then meanwhile, you have plenty of Australians who are breathing a sigh of relief, saying they're happy that she's not coming.
Yeah.
They see her views as potentially harmful, especially in a country that prides itself on diversity and inclusion.
This situation really throws into sharp relief that tension between individual rights and the collective good.
Yeah.
Where do you draw the line?
Right.
It's a question that doesn't have an easy answer.
For sure.
And it's one that every nation is grappling with in its own way.
It feels like this whole thing is a global Rorschach test.
Yeah.
Everyone is looking at this situation and seeing their own beliefs reflected back at them.
Totally.
Whether you're pro-Owens, anti-Owens, or somewhere in between.
Yeah.
This case has exposed some raw nerves about just how much free speech we're willing to tolerate. Exactly.
It forces us to confront the complexities of free speech in a world where ideas can spread like wildfire across borders.
Yeah.
And it makes us ask, if Australia can do this, what's stopping other countries from following suit?
That's a question that should make us all stop and think.
Yeah.
Because if ideas themselves become grounds for exclusion, what does that mean for international travel? For academic exchange, for the free flow of information in general?
It raises the stakes considerably, doesn't it?
Okay, now that's kind of terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a sobering thought, isn't it? And it's not just like some dystopian sci-fi scenario or something, We're already seeing this trend towards, increased scrutiny of people's online activity and a willingness to take action based on what people say, what they believe.
So are we heading towards a world where everyone has to self-censor just to avoid getting flagged by like some government algorithm or something?
It's a legitimate concern.
That feels like a really slippery slope.
It is. And I think the Owens case really shines a light on this global dilemma, you know?
Right.
On the one hand, you have nations trying to protect their social cohesion, trying to prevent, you know, the kind of polarization and unrest that we've seen like erupt in other parts of the world.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you have the principle of free speech, this idea that people should be able to express their views, even if those views are unpopular or offensive to some.
It's like trying to balance on a razor's edge.
It is.
How do you find that sweet spot where you're safeguarding free expression, but not letting things spiral into like chaos and division?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Right.
But I think this case also underscores something else that's been brewing for a while now. The way social media has completely reshaped the landscape of public discourse.
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
It's like social media has become this giant echo chamber where outrage and division thrive.
Right.
Algorithms reward the most extreme voices.
Yeah.
Nuance gets lost in the shuffle, and it feels like everyone's just shouting at each other from their own little ideological bubbles.
Exactly. And the problem is those online bubbles aren't contained within like national borders anymore.
Right.
What someone says in one corner of the world can instantly reverberate across continents, triggering reactions and consequences that are hard to predict or control.
So in a way, this whole Candace Owen situation feels like a wake-up call.
Yeah.
It's a stark reminder that the world is changing, the rules of engagement are changing.
They are.
And we're all still trying to figure out how to navigate this new reality.
I think you're right. We're in uncharted territory here, and we're all just scrambling to adapt.
Yeah.
But, you know, I also think it's an opportunity.
Okay.
An opportunity to have some really difficult but necessary conversations about what kind of world we want to live in.
Right.
Do we want a world where fear and censorship dictate what we can say and where we can go?
Yeah.
Or do we want a world where we can embrace the messy, sometimes uncomfortable reality of living in a diverse and interconnected society?
It's a choice we all have to make.
What do you think?
Individually and collectively.
Absolutely.
And the decisions we make today will have ripple effects far into the future.
Absolutely. The stakes are high.
Yeah.
But I believe we have the capacity to rise to the challenge.
I hope so.
It starts with recognizing that, you know, we all have biases, we all have blind spots, and we all need to be willing to listen to perspectives that challenge our own.
It's about having the courage to step outside of our echo chambers, to engage in good faith dialogue with people we disagree with, and to recognize that even the most controversial voices can sometimes offer valuable insights.
For sure.
And it's about recognizing that freedom of speech comes with responsibilities.
Absolutely.
It's not a license to spread hate or incite violence. It's a privilege that should be exercised with thoughtfulness and care.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
This deep dive has taken us down some pretty winding paths, hasn't it?
Yeah.
We started with a travel ban.
I know.
And ended up exploring like the very foundations of free speech, national sovereignty, the power of social media to shape global discourse.
It's a testament to how interconnected all these issues really are.
Yeah.
And how a seemingly isolated incident can expose some of the deepest tensions and challenges facing our world today.
And for our listeners who are still with us, I'm curious what's resonated most with you so far.
What are your takeaways from this deep dive?
Do you agree with Australia's decision to bar Candace Owens?
Where do you draw the line between free speech and protecting social harmony?
And what do you think the long-term implications of this case might be? Not just for high-profile figures like Owens, but for everyday people like you and me.
Yeah, it's a lot to process, isn't it? It feels like this whole situation really highlights how much we're all wrestling with these like big, messy questions, you know? Of freedom and responsibility and how to live together in a world that feels increasingly fractured.
It's definitely not a simple conversation, but I think the fact that we are having it, that people are engaging with these issues, is a positive sign. It shows that we're not just passively accepting the status quo. we're actively trying to figure out a better way forward.
Okay, so let's try to bring this back to the individual listener for a second, because it's easy to get lost in these big abstract concepts. What does all of this actually mean for someone who's
I don't know, say planning a trip abroad? Or maybe thinking about studying abroad?
That's a great question, and I think it's becoming increasingly important for people to be aware of the potential consequences of their online presence, especially if they're planning to travel to countries with stricter immigration policies.
So you're saying someone's social media posts, their political views, even just the websites they visit, could potentially raise red flags for immigration officials.
It's not out of the realm of possibility.
Wow.
And it's not just about overtly extremist content either.
Right.
Even expressing views that are considered mainstream in one country could be seen as controversial or even dangerous in another.
That's kind of unsettling.
It is a bit.
So what can people do to protect themselves?
Well, for starters, being aware of the laws and cultural norms of the country you're visiting is crucial.
Okay.
Some countries are very sensitive about certain topics. And it's important to be respectful of those sensitivities.
Right.
And of course, being mindful of what you post online is always a good practice.
Right.
Regardless of where you're traveling.
It feels like we're entering an era where we all need to be a bit more cautious.
Yeah.
A bit more aware of the potential global reach of our words and actions.
I think it's a shift in mindset for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think it has to be a negative thing.
Okay.
It can also be an opportunity to cultivate greater empathy.
Right.
To develop a deeper understanding of different cultures and perspectives.
Yeah.
And to approach our online interactions with more thoughtfulness and responsibility.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Candace Owens controversy, what's the one key takeaway you want to leave our listeners with?
I think the biggest takeaway is that we're living in a world where the lines between the personal and the political, the local and the global, are becoming increasingly blurred. What we say and do online can have real-world consequences, and we need to be aware of that.
Yeah.
But I also believe that this interconnectedness presents us with incredible opportunities for learning, growth, and connection.
Yeah.
It's up to us to navigate this new reality with wisdom, compassion, and a willingness to engage with the complexities of our world.
Well said. And to our listeners, we want to hear from you.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on all of this?
What are your takeaways?
Has this deep dive changed your perspective on free speech, national security, or the power of social media?
Share your insights, your questions, your challenges.
Let's keep the conversation going.
Because ultimately, it's through dialogue, through respectful debate, and through willingness to understand different viewpoints that we can create a more just and equitable world for everyone.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It was a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going.